All right, hello, hello, hello. We have a short little video here from the Crucible channel, hosted by Andrew Wilson, and he's debating Destiny here over some very in detail, kind of detracted stuff from the main topic they're arguing about. I think they're arguing about whether or not January 6th counted as an insurrection or not. And Andrew Wilson is doing an internal critique of Destiny's position. But they kind of went sideways into this little side argument here, and I feel like a lot of people kind of over revere Destiny as this like kind of intellectual, and I think there's just a lot of moments where Destiny's lack of logic and kind of common sense understanding and kind of his lack of structure in the way he thinks uh, comes out into light and makes him look very unintelligent. And I think it's important to point those out for the people who treat Destiny as a serious intellectual opponent. He has some serious gaffes, and I think they need to be pointed out and critiqued.
Hey, what's up, y'all? Y'all hear me?
Got you.
Hey, I got a question for Destiny, and I think Andrew can pick up on afterwards. So, based off of your 4 points that you gave for what would make an insurrection, technically, none of your points make it necessary for there to be violence. You say in point 3, force or intimidation, but it doesn't necessarily have to be violent. So, based off of that, wouldn't any legal protest where you're advocating for a certain political cause or anything like that in a public space, wouldn't that also, by your definition, count as an insurrection?
No, because I think
Okay, let me pause just real quick. Yeah, so for some context, basically, it started off. I think the debate topic was January 6th an insurrection, and Andrew Wilson started by asking Destiny for a definition of an insurrection so they could begin the debate. And then Andrew Wilson started doing critiques on the definition, basically saying, hey, wait a minute, those 4 criteria you gave for this definition here seem to fit this other definition better. Maybe your definition isn't very good. And Destiny's kind of response to that is, well, you haven't even provided me a definition of X, so how can you critique my definition of X when you haven't even provided one of your own to compare it against? And that's kind of what this spin-off debate has kind of gone into.
I think that the intimidation part is important. The quote that I borrowed from here was from Justice Marshall in 1807. He said, quote, "The most comprehensive definition of levying war against the king or against the United States, which I have seen, requires an assemblage of men ready to act and with an intent to do some treasonable act and armed in warlike manner, or else assembled in such numbers as to supersede the necessity of arms." So I don't think you necessarily have to engage in violence, but I think that having the people there with the purpose of like intimidation and being ready to act with violence, I think is easily enough to satisfy
No justice,
element 3.
like no justice, no peace.
You would have to point to like you would have to point to a particular thing.
Yeah, I'll
like,
point
what
to
are they- what
I'll
is
point
the-
to Chaz Chop. So, do you think that if you were to take over a big portion, or even a small, tiny portion of a state, and consider it to now be neutral from the United States itself, that becomes a federal matter?
All right, I'm just going to skip forward because they talk about this thing for a while.
Ceding this area from the United States, how would that not?
seceding it from the United States?
That's
or
what
were
they
they
claimed.
seceding from Washington or whatever? Were they seceding from the America, or were they
Yes.
seceding from like the
They
state
are
longer accepted
seceding.
USD? They no longer
Or to
or-
have a succession or a secession, that would mean you couldn't accept USD anymore.
Okay,
Like,
I
why
don't
would
know
that?
enough.
Why would that matter?
Because it seems like if you're gonna, it feels like part of that would be like establishing your own government, establishing your own like foreign
Yeah, but you
relations.
can
and
still. They were trying to do that. They had their own armed militant group who was there armed, definitely intimidating, refused to own their own gardens, which were federal law. Seed in the United. Oh,
I don't remember this being. Can you tell me what statements or what they made? I don't know the details of this. What did they make, or what statements did they make about federal secession?
yeah. So Chaz Chop, they considered it the neutral zone. There was multiple statements made that this is no longer part of the United States.
By
We
who?
are taking this over, just by the people who were there.
By the people. So if a random person says a particular thing, that because I thought you said earlier.
Well, I
that
mean,
we
if a
couldn't read
random
intent
person
into the
takes a
Donald
baseball
Trump
bat to
crowd.
someone, you call it a
You
secession.
said earlier that we couldn't read intent into the Donald Trump crowd, despite the fact that people were hanging signs saying 1776, hang Mike Pence, and the statements that Trump had made. But I
Yeah,
can
but you say such an inference is fine. So this is again.
I didn't. I said the inference is fine.
Wait
because
a second.
The
this is the
statements that
same
Donald Trump
as
had
an
made,
internal.
collecting the people there for a given
Bro, that
purpose
makes no
they
sense.
actually managed to succeed in doing.
Yeah,
It makes
you
perfect
just
sense.
Yeah, I just want to comment a little bit on the January 6th thing, because they are kind of spurging about that before they get to the actual point, which is going to completely destroy my viewer retention, but oh well. Basically, what I think is happening is because Destiny doesn't like conservatives, he finds the like the small group of extremists who were probably trying to subvert the riot into something more of an insurrection. But that doesn't mean that the whole riot itself was an intentional insurrection. It just means that there was an offshoot group who wanted to turn it into something more than it was. Right? That happens all the time, pretty much with anything. It happens with religions, it happens with peaceful protests, it happens with political movements. There's always going to be extremist factions or people within a group who want to subvert it towards a malicious cause or extremist cause. That's fairly normal. It doesn't mean that the whole thing was a insurrection, nor does it mean that we have to give them much credence. It's like the same way how if you have anyone in the manosphere who does anything violent, they'll just call them all like, oh, they're all violent misogynists. Like, the group gets represented by the worst actors within that group. Like, everyone on the right gets portrayed as being alt-right or like a Nazi or like whatever, simply because a few bad actors in the space do some extreme things. And I'm sure Destiny wouldn't want, conservatives and the general public at large to think that every Democrat voter and every left-leaning person is a pink-haired, blue-haired feminazi. So we wouldn't want people to, allow the extremists of the left to represent the entire left and represent himself as a leftist. But he'll do the same for conservatives in pretty much any scenario that conservatives, have some goffs. So I don't know. There's some inconsistencies there in his approach.
Talking over me before I can make the point doesn't help your point. No, it actually doesn't make any sense. Because your claim is that you can read into the hearts and minds of these people based on what you perceive their actions to be. It's like, okay, fair enough. So if the people who are there are doing the exact same thing, they're saying, okay, this is now a neutral zone. We're seceding from the United States of America. Why can't we read that into their actions as well, Destiny? It makes no sense.
I would absolutely do that but I don't know of any statement like that. And you can't name a single one, so I don't know what I'm supposed to go. I don't know what I can work
If
off of.
Chaz Chop, if there was such a statement, let's just assume that there was for a second, would you then consider that to be an insurrection?
If they said that we are going to secede from the United States of America, and they had like some organized violent wave and all the other elements from it, then I'd say, yeah, this would count as an insurrection. Easily, of course.
Gotcha.
I'll tell you what happened. I'll tell you what happened. Basically, Destiny was thinking about it, and then he's like, wait, why am I defending this point? I actually don't know why I'm defending this point. Then he just receded and gave up. Because he was hardcore trying to evade the question for like a long time. And then he just was like, wait, that is just blatantly an insurrection. Sure, whatever. Like halfway through that conversation. It's kind of funny.
Say the same for January 6th, though, because you haven't given a definition of insurrection, but that's the difference between good faith and bad faith.
No, that's not bad faith for me to do an internal critique in your definition. When I can at least take your definition and say, wait a second, all of these apply to a different category. And that was established very well.
You're critiquing my definition without even having a definition.
I don't need to have a definition to critique yours. That's absurd.
You can't.
That's illogical and absurd.
But the debate. Stop using illogical. It doesn't mean anything. You're abusing the word. Okay.
What does it mean?
The debate was over whether or not January 6th was an insurrection. If you only came to that debate to critique my position, and I shouldn't even let you get away with this. You said earlier that you were neutral on it. You're not neutral on it. The answer for you is you can't compute the question. It's undefined. You don't have a neutral position. If you don't have a definition of insurrection, you can't possibly take a position.
Well, okay, so kind of very ironic for Destiny to use math here after getting annoyed at the imposition of logic. And him being called illogical, he's going to jump straight to math, which is an extension of logic. But I assure you that Andrew Wilson has his own definition of insurrection. The reason he doesn't want to bring it up is because if he brings it up, it becomes something that Destiny can then attack and launch, kind of divert off into, is then kind of cross-examining Andrew Wilson's definition of insurrection, and it gives wiggle room for Destiny to argue by giving him more things to attack, basically. So Andrew Wilson is not interested in giving Destiny any wiggle room whatsoever or anything for Destiny to latch onto. That's why he's not providing his own definition. And let me just explain really quickly before these spurgs start talking over each other. You see Fresh there, he's looking at his phone. He's clearly not interested. But the reason Andrew Wilson doesn't need to provide his own definition, Destiny, think about this. Just slow down and think about this for a moment. I think he goes too fast. Like he's on perhaps some weird medication, perhaps Adderall or something, too much caffeine maybe, where he doesn't slow down and think his thoughts all the way through. So they're just kind of, it's like a person who doesn't quite know how to run yet, but they're trying to run really fast. So they just kind of stumble over their steps, and they just kind of look silly. But let me go through step by step why he doesn't need to provide his own definition and why Destiny is actually wrong here and he should really reconsider. Is that Andrew Wilson is making an internal critique of Destiny's definition. And to make that internal critique, he does not need to compare it to some unerrant standard definition from which he compares Destiny's definition, which I think is how Destiny is perceiving the critique to be structured, is he's imagining Andrew Wilson having a definition and then pointing out an inconsistency to his definition or a proper definition that Destiny's definition might deviate from. So basically, it would be a comparison. And then if Destiny's definition does not measure up to this, standard, this kind of perfect standard, or perhaps Andrew Wilson's definition, if he doesn't have his own definition, he can't make a comparison, right? But that's not at all what Andrew Wilson is doing. He's not making a comparison between two definitions and pointing out an inconsistency there. He's merely doing a critique on the logical structure of Destiny's definition. So a definition has some logical criteria that has to be applicable to all words. For example, if I have a definition of word, but that definition applies to a different word and does not apply to the word it's ascribed to, like let's say I have a definition of X. I have these traits. Well, it has to be round. It has to be material. It has to be this heavy. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not X. That's a circle, or that's a ball. That criteria fits this other thing, which is not X, better than it fits X, or it is exclusive from X in some way. So if the definition that you're creating for X better fits a different word that is not X, then you've committed a logical fallacy. Basically, you've committed some kind of logical inconsistency, that illogical setup that Andrew Wilson can then critique. So using the laws of logic, Andrew Wilson is able to critique the definition, and he doesn't actually have to know what the definition is. This is why when you do mathematics and when you do logic, they use placeholder names. Like kids in middle school and high school get mad that, X exists and Y exists. I miss the days of math where we used to do numbers. They get mad at the placeholder variables X and Y. But the reason that you can use X and Y is because the rules of math and logic are universal. They apply to everything. And they're the same no matter what the specific subject is that you're analyzing or you're using it on. So, Andrew Wilson doesn't need to know the specifics of his own definition. He doesn't need to know anything about what the word insurrection means. He doesn't have to have his own definition. He doesn't even have to know a whole lot about Destiny's definition. But just by analyzing the logical structure of it, if he can figure out that, okay, this does not meet the logical criteria for what a definition of a word needs to be, even if it's all placeholder terms, and if it breaks a logical structure, then it's inconsistent, and I can critique it on that. He doesn't have to, he's not making a comparative standard to it. He's doing a logical critique of his definition, and Destiny just does not compute in this scenario.
It's like dividing by zero. The answer is not neutral or nothing.
Again,
you just have an undefined
well, I know
position
you
on it
don't
because
like
you don't even
this.
have a definition of a term.
Yeah, I know you hate this, but
that is true.
illogical.
Oh yeah, let me talk about neutral position is actually a very specific meaning in logic. When someone says they have a neutral position, it does not mean they have a non-position. That is not what it means. It means they do not ascribe to the left or the right. Right? So it does not mean they do not have a definition. It does not mean that they lack the necessary criteria to have a definition. It just means that they don't hold a position. That's all it means. And Destiny, once again, has not taken the amount of rigorous, logical kind of studies that I think Andrew has. And but it shouldn't be that complicated. I feel like I'm being kind of too nice to Destiny in a way, because he's the one bickering about the setup that Andrew's giving him, which is completely fair. For Andrew to critique Destiny's definition, Andrew doesn't have to provide his own definition. That would be irrelevant. That would be completely irrelevant to Andrew's critique, and that's precisely why he doesn't want to bring it up, because he doesn't want Destiny latching on to something irrelevant and detracting from Andrew's critique. So he's not giving him that wiggle room. And it's just, I don't know why Destiny is pressing on this, because he's just flat out wrong here. He's really insistent that Andrew give his own definition. He's really insistent that his position is not neutral. It's like you're arguing with the wrong person, Destiny. This is not your expertise. You should not be. You clearly don't understand what's going on here.
That's actually an illogical statement to say, that I would need to have a definition of anything to critique your definition of it if I have something else that I can make a comparison to that fits with better, that you agree it fits better in. I don't know why.
He didn't even need to say that. To critique his definition, he doesn't even need to make any kind of a comparison. All he's doing is he's applying the rules of logic to the definition, because the definition of a word has certain logical criteria that it has to apply to. For it to be a distinct definition. Because what is the definition? It means it has to define something. It means it has to delineate it from other things, or else the definition does not work. For example, if I have a object and I give its definition, let's say I have this pencil here. I have a pencil, and I say the definition of this pencil is that it's plastic. Okay, that's not a definition. While the pencil itself may be plastic, that is not an adequate definition, because there are tons of other things that are plastic, and it does not delineate it from any of the other things that are plastic. So it's not an adequate definition for this pencil. If I were also to say, I have this pencil here, the definition for my pencil is that it's made of water. Well, it's not made of water, so that would be just not true. So I can't use that as my definition. If I were to then say, this here is a pencil. It's made of plastic, and you can buy it at a store, and you can write with it, and you can't erase it. Okay, well, that actually fits the definition of so that is a very distinct definition, and it's good at delineating it from other things, because how many things can you buy at stores that are made of plastic that you can write with that you can't erase? That's very good at delineating it from other things. But it's actually not the best definition to use for a pencil, because that better fits the definition of a pen, right? Because pens you can't erase, but pencils you can. So that would be an improper definition for a pencil, but it would be better ascribed to something like a pen. Likewise, let me think of a better one. Like, I want to point out another if you have a general term, what would be a good general term? Let's say I have different types of paper. So I have a definition for loose leaf, which is the paper with the lines on it that you write. And I say the definition of loose leaf is that it's white, it's made with bleach and paper and pulp and all these other chemicals, and it's 8.5 by 11. Okay, well that would actually be the broader definition of paper, right? That would not be loose leaf. That would be the definition of paper, right? And sometimes, because if the definition of the word you're using has a certain vagueness or a certain universality to it, it might apply to something. It might apply to a category of which it belongs to, because loose leaf is a category of paper, right? So if I describe something as being, made of bleach, pulp, 8.5 by 11, white, something you can write on, well, that's actually a definition for the category of loose leaf, which is paper, right? But if I were to then make another delineation and say, well, it has lines in it. Okay, well, now I've changed the definition to a subcategory, which would be loose leaf, right? So so that was quite a tangent, but you can see that to create a definition for a word, there's actually logical criteria that you have to abide by in the way that you create your definition so that it actually defines the object. Defining, giving definition. You want to give it definition, you want to give it clarity, and have it delineate from other things. And there's a logical structure to this, and you can use the rules of logic to critique a definition without having to compare it to anything at all. So Andrew could have even simplified his point further, because he was saying, well, I can compare it to other things and see that it matches the definition of a different word better. But he doesn't even have to do that. He could just use logic purely to point out an inconsistency in Destiny's definition. And Destiny clearly does not have a good grounding of logic to really understand what's going on here. He thinks Andrew Wilson is trying to make a comparison of saying, here's my definition, I'm going to compare it to your definition, Destiny. That's not what he's doing at all. And that's not how an internal critique works. You're not comparing it to a standard. You're just you're dissecting its structure and seeing if it holds up at all.
I ask you that. Just okay. What would your position be on if I were to ask you? Is January 6th?
What the fuck? Hell? Are you okay?
What's your answer to that? Is January?
Did you just
6th,
go blah 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 blah?
Yeah.
Why?
I'm asking you, was January 6th a? What's your answer to that? Would you say you're neutral on that?
Well, that would be incoherent. I wouldn't even understand what you're saying.
Thank you. I agree. Yes. Insurrection, that term is incoherent to you because you have no definition for the word. So I'm uttering nothing.
Okay, well, it's obviously not true, Destiny. Andrew Wilson definitely has his own definition of the word insurrection. He's not like an idiot, right? He's not illiterate. He knows what an insurrection is. He's just not giving you he's not giving it to you because he doesn't want you to be able to use that as a launch point for some kind of a detraction from his critique. So he's not giving it to you so you're not able to weaponize it as a distraction, right? So obviously he has his own definition, right? Obviously, but he doesn't need it to be able to critique yours.
When I say insurrection, you have no way to compute the question, so you can't say that you're neutral on it. The same way you can't say you're neutral on it being.
Well, I don't know. I don't know how fucking
insurrection because you have no.
I don't know how language works then. When you say, okay, this is a Snicker bar, and I don't know what a Snicker bar is, but I can't make comparisons to other things so that I can at least understand where you're coming from with what a Snicker bar is. Okay, Destiny.
That's correct. That is correct.
That's absurd.
What if I showed you a bar and you're like, that's not a Snicker bar. That looks like a chocolate wafery thing with caramel on it.
Yeah, if it fit the criteria. That's really, isn't that great how that works?
Actually,
if things fit other criteria better.
With a Milky Way. That's actually way more like a Milky Way. No, it's not quite a Milky Way. It's a Snicker bar. And you're like, well, I don't
Well, then it would fit that criteria of a Snickers bar, the ontology of a Snickers bar, better than the ontology of.
This is so funny. The ontology of a Snickers bar. Oh, these guys are so cute. They're so cute, eh? Don't you think? Don't you think these two little angry children on the internet quite cute, yelling about Snickers bars and Milky Ways? Very, very adorable.
The Milky
Snickers
Way.
bar. You don't have that ontology is not existent for you because it's undefined. You have no definition of what a
You
Snickers bar
wouldn't
even
need.
is.
You don't need to have a definition for you
need to
to
have a
understand an
definition of a
ontology
thing.
of a new concept. What are you talking about? That's crazy.
We're arguing over whether a thing is a thing, whether A is B, and for you, B is undefined. So you can't even be agnostic on the question. You can't compute it. It's gibberish to you, like when I utter
No,
gibberish.
this is
Well, it's actually not what he's doing. It's not. He's not comparing A to B and deciding whether or not A is B. He's looking at A and he's dissecting the A to see if it's internally logically consistent. It'd be like if you took a computer apart and you're saying, okay, do all the parts plug in together? I don't need to know what device I'm tearing apart. It could be a laptop, it could be a computer, it could be alien technology. But if all the parts aren't plugged into one another, the machine isn't going to work, right? So I don't need to know if it's a laptop, if it's an iPad, or if it's a random alien spaceship. But the same rules apply to all electronics, which is that all of the components have to plug into one another. They all have to be connected, right? Likewise, with words, all words have to have logical structure to their definitions. I don't have to know what the word is, but if I can see that it's not structured properly, then I can critique the word and its definition. That's all that's going on here. Is it's doing a dissection and a critique. That's all he's doing.
It's gibberish to me. This makes no sense. Why? There's absolutely no reason why, if you've never, even if you were to grant, I'd never even heard the term insurrection before, that I couldn't understand if you came up with a term for insurrection. I said, well, fit this other criteria better, why it is that you couldn't concede that that was true. That's this absurd logic. And yes, Destiny's illogical.
So there you go. So yeah, we have a clear blunder from the blue-haired thing. The thing. Ugh. Yeah. I don't even know I don't even know if I want to give it a him. I think he kind of deserves the title of an it. You know what I mean? Some people don't really, they're not really earned the title of being called a person. They're kind of just it. The thing over there, the gremlin. But yeah, like his Destiny's one attribute that he consoles himself with that night is that he's smart. He thinks he is. But then he makes serious mistakes like this where he can't understand a simple concept like an internal logical critique, and he just starts kind of spazzing, kind of like an idiot. And this was early into the debate. You can't even argue he had been doing the debate for a long time and was just kind of deteriorating. It had only been like 20 minutes into the debate, and Destiny had immediately fallen apart. But this just goes to show how weak the internal structure is to Destiny's worldview. Destiny has a very expansive worldview, but if you actually dig deep, there's very little roots, right? Like if you think about someone's worldview, you can kind of think of it like a plant. So you have the roots at the bottom, which is the logical structure and the foundation that lies underneath the plant that you don't always see unless you dig deep. And then you have the prescriptions, the descriptions, what they actively say out in the public sphere, kind of the ideas that they propagate, right? Propagate. That's why those words overlap. But yeah, you have all of the external things that everyone sees. Those are like the leaves of the plant. And you can have someone with a worldview with a lot of leaves. You see a lot of leaves. It's very, very prominent. They look very intelligent because they've got all these leaves which are spreading everywhere and are beautiful. But then you look at the roots, you dig a little, and a lot of the time these people's roots are not well dug into the ground, and they're very easy to pull up. So people like Destiny like to talk very fast. They like to show off their leaves, and it's all very fast and quick and all these colors, and it's beautiful and blah blah blah. And then you look at someone like Andrew Wilson, who's got a good solid foundation of roots. He pokes at the roots of Destiny a little bit, and there's nothing there. They barely go an inch into the ground. And it takes someone like Andrew Wilson to really point that out. But even someone like me, who is just kind of I'm just a random guy, even I can see when Destiny's made a very obvious blunder here. And to the people who think Destiny is someone of intellectual merit, I would think again. I would have a look at. I'm going to try to post more of these to kind of deconstruct people like Destiny, because they just have shitty roots in terms of their thinking and grounding logic. And yeah, don't revere someone like this. Don't look up to someone like this. The one thing that you thought you had, Destiny, you're like, yes, I'm a degenerate. Yes, I like slurping other men's zinc. Yes, I'm a cuck. Yes, my wife left me. Yes, my son hates me. Yes, I'm ugly. Yes, I'm disgenic. Yes, my hair is blue. Yes, I'm all these things. Yes, I'm hated by everyone. Yes, I've got a bad personality. Yes, I'm slimy and subversive, and I have a bad nature. Yes, my parents don't love me. But at least I'm smart, Destiny said. At least I'm smart. At least I'm intellectual. Well, I'll let you know, Destiny, to anyone who's actually playing the game seriously, you're not smart.